Hello, MotoAmerica fans. Welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. We are delighted to have on with us today Dr. Carl Price, who's been in our paddock for a long time as a road racer, and he has a company called Plastic Surgery. I can't remember exactly, Carl. What is it called?
Plastic surgery racing.
So, oh, okay, but your practice. That's what I was
Oh,
getting at.
a Center for Plastic Surgery.
Center for Plastic Surgery.
Yeah.
I remember we were at, gosh, it felt like we were at, I don't know, Utah or Miller, and I think Chris Parrish cut himself, and I think you ended up stitching it up. And I was thinking, well, he's a plastic surgeon, so that's going to be a beautiful thing. But you've been with us for a long time, haven't you, Carl?
Yeah, I actually started in Motor America with the very first Twins Cup race at Road Atlanta, which what 5 years ago, is that right?
Yeah,
Five,
yeah,
six
I think
years ago.
so.
Um,
2018. Yep.
yeah, actually gotten the points and everything.
Yes.
So
Yes. So you've been involved with this for a long time. You've been a physician for even longer than that, but you've been involved in motorcycling for a long time. And we're going to talk to you today about this new blood test device that we've now got with regard to Abbott. And I think I want to start, Dr. Carl, by asking you, what was the birth of this? Did they contact you, and did you have a prior relationship with Abbott? I know they're a huge company that makes a lot of different medical devices, so this seems to make sense.
not really. They didn't come to me.
Okay.
You know, um, I've unfortunately, like many racers, have had several concussions. And Back at the Ridge, which was about 4 years ago, I had a concussion in the chicane, and was really knocked out, and went to medical. Dr. Rossi at that point was CMO, and went to medical and had the full kind of testing. They did the scat test and they did the goggle test and all that kind of stuff. And I passed it totally. And I had double vision and I was really concussed. And it was kind of impactful for me because I realized how poor our diagnosis of concussion was. Concussion is a clinical diagnosis. It is not until now, not a blood test. It's not a X-ray or anything else. It's a clinical diagnosis. It's a constellation of physical findings as well as history. And so if I say that Sean, have a concussion, then you have a concussion. It's a clinical diagnosis. Um, Very subjective. With this blood test, which I'll kind of get into some details about it in a minute if you want me to go down that rabbit hole, we finally have some objective evidence. And so I've kind of, way back in medical school, I thought I wanted to be a neurologist, and then I wanted to actually do stuff. So I thought, well, I'll be a neurosurgeon. And for a variety of reasons, I ended up going in a different direction. But so I've been interested in a long time, and so I've actually knew about these biomarkers that we're measuring for a while, but it was pretty impractical for kind of what we do. These biomarkers, it was actually developed by the Department of Defense. And it was a public-private partnership between the Department of Defense and Abbott Labs to develop this test, and obviously for soldiers, I mean it's a big problem with IEDs and all that kind of stuff. And so they developed these two bio or identified these two biomarkers, developed this test. Um, and initially it was done on serum. So you would draw blood, spin the blood down, take that and send it off to a reference lab. It's not very helpful for point of service kind of stuff. Um, there's a device called an iStat device, which has been around for years, that they use in hospitals, emergency rooms, that they do blood tests, CBCs, chemistries, that kind of stuff. Um, and they developed a new one, which is the Alinity device, which it uses an ELISA test, which is an antibody kind of test to kind of find these biomarkers. It was approved in April of last year to do on whole blood on this device, which I'll show you the device in a minute. And so when I heard that, I said, okay, we got to get on board with this because this is truly a game changer. This is the first bit of objective evidence we have for concussion. Everything else is subjective. Right now, it's approved by the FDA to determine whether CT scan is necessary or not. The reason, 80 something percent of people who have a concussion get a CT scan. The CT scan is not to diagnose concussion. Once again, that's a clinical diagnosis. That's if I say you have a concussion, you have a concussion. The CT scan is to determine whether or not there's a more significant injury. There's a brain bleed or something else. 90+% of the time, the CT scans are negative when you have a concussion. It's a huge expense. It's time consuming. With this test, if the test is below a certain threshold, which I'll show you in a second, um, then you don't have to get a CT scan, which is huge. If it's above that threshold, then you're more likely to have a more significant injury. And so, from my standpoint as CMO, Chief Medical Officer, it's helpful. If that test is elevated, I'm not going to send them to the local hospital that has a CT scanner but may not have a neurosurgeon there. I'm going to send them to the trauma hospital that's got a neurosurgeon there because they're more likely to have an injury. So, I mean, it truly is from a triage standpoint in my setting, it's a game changer. There's going to be some data coming out and some consensus statements coming out probably in the next few weeks about using it for diagnosis because I think it's going to be real useful for diagnosis. And we can get into that in a minute, but I mean, this test is amazing. I mean, it's literally you put a drop of blood on this little chip. It's like a lab and a chip, and then you plug it into this device, which basically looks like a tricorder from Star Wars. I mean, from Star Trek, and it gives you the answer in 15 minutes. And the answer that comes up is either elevated or not elevated. So send them for a CT scan, don't. Um, but if you page to the next page, it gives you the absolute levels of these two biomarkers, and I can get into those weeds if you want to in a minute. Um, but that helps me kind of to grade concussions a little bit. If those levels are lower, then it's more mild concussion, and so maybe they can get back sooner. If those levels are higher and still not elevated to send for a CT scan, I'm a little more worried about that rider. So anyway, it's truly exciting. Like I said, it's a game changer. I think MotoAmerica is the first sports organization in the world, certainly the first motorsports organization in the world that's using this as part of our concussion protocol.
Yeah.
MotoGP doesn't use it. World Superbike doesn't use it. Formula One doesn't use it. Nobody else uses it. We're the very first ones using this.
Yeah, and Carl, I want to go back to you being a racer. You had experienced a concussion, and we were talking about this. So, in other sports, including ours, I guess, where you can evaluate a concussion by these more traditional older means, people that are high functioning, you being one of them, you can
You're being
un
generous.
you can kind of cheat the system. You know the answers a little bit. And I'm not saying you were trying to when you were concussed, but you were able to do that, and then you experienced some anger issues that you realized there's something not right there. And maybe your wife Kathy noticed it, but if
I
you would
bet
have
she
had
did.
Yeah.
that but it is one of the symptoms for sure. And if you would have
And
had that
personality
blood
changes is one of the symptoms for sure.
personality changes. That's a good way of putting it. And if you would have had that for yourself, it would have probably shown that you had a concussion. But you knew based on your background that you had it after a little bit anyway, even though you passed the initial tests on it or the evaluations. Is that correct?
Right. And in fairness, they said I had a concussion because I was knocked out. That's
Oh,
what
okay, okay.
so it was they said I had a concussion, but like I said, it imprinted on me the fact that these other tests are really not very good. And so yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of manifestations of concussion that can be longer term. And you know, in my own instance, I didn't know how badly I was concussed until, several months later when I looked back and said, yeah, I was really not tracking as good, you know. So yeah, I think it, and this test may be helpful from that. Like I said, I think it's going to be helpful in terms of in helping us stratify that ultimately. Right now, we're not there yet. We don't have enough data, but I think there'll be some of that. I mean, honestly, if I was a young sports medicine resident or doctor, I mean, this is an area that's really ripe for some really interesting and exciting kind of research on. So,
The thing that I'm kind of excited about with it is I I've seen before, and I think, well, obviously you were there. I think it was Brainerd when Cameron Bobier hit his head. And when I saw him before you, and I could tell by looking at him that he kind of wanted someone to tell him that he couldn't race or shouldn't race.
yeah.
And I think that's a good thing because they're letting down their team. They're maybe costing themselves a chance at a championship, but in the long run, it's not as important as them getting brain damaged or something, along those lines. So I think it's good to have something that says like, "Hey, you're okay," or B, "You need to go get further checks." And it
Right.
takes it out of their hands, takes it out of your hands, basically, and takes it out of, a team owner or whatever.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Paul. I think that's a one of the things that is going to be very helpful with this is that I can do the blood test and I can say, look, your brain has been damaged. You can't race. Because I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I have participants come up to me and say, oh yeah, I just got the breath knocked out of me. I'm like, yeah, not so much. Um, and I say this at the writers' meetings. My goal is not to keep people off the track. My goal is to get people back out there functioning at their highest level, and that's why we have in our competition care clinic. We have all our sports medicine stuff. We have chiropractors. We have physical therapists. All that stuff to get those guys back out there performing at their best. So my goal is not to keep them off the track, but when they are injured, I don't want them to injure themselves more or injure somebody else. I mean, if they're concussed, it's not safe for them to be out there. Their decision making, their reaction times, everything else is going to be not as good. I mean, the question I always ask the riders when I'm in that situation, like you just mentioned, Paul, I said, would you want to race against somebody who felt like you?
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So in that particular instance, yeah, I mean, you could look in his eyes and you could tell it wasn't right.
Mm. So I want to ask you about a couple things that happened this weekend, and I haven't even talked to you about this ahead of time, but one of them was,
Oh,
well, I don't think I'm going to put you on the spot, but CJ LaRoche had a real big high side, and I saw a sequence of photos that one of the photographers, he literally high sided. He had an electrical problem with his bike, and he went way up in the air. But the thing he didn't do, and I talked to his team about this, is they said he didn't hit his head at all. They got the helmet back from Arai, and there was not a scratch on it, not a mark on it. Now, he probably did sustain some G forces. Can a person sustain a concussion without impacting their head?
yes.
Okay.
Short answer.
Yeah.
So in that particular instance, one of the things I do at MotoAmerica is I have Jason Knudsen, who kind of is an EMT, who sits up in race control and he monitors everything that goes on. And he sends me a WhatsApp text of every incident. We use the rider response codes that MotoGP uses. So it kind of grades the different kind of crashes, and he'll send me videos too. He can get the video replay and he'll send me a video of more significant injuries. And so he sends me those videos. And even though CJ didn't come in and see me in medical, I'll go out, Jason will text me, I'll go out and find him and see him. And I did in CJ's case too. And he was fine. He didn't have any incident. And so, but the answer to your question is, yeah, you can just from those impacts, those forces, you can get a concussion even if you don't hit your head.
Okay.
Because it's things rattling around in there that cause the
Yeah.
problems. And
Hmm.
so, I go through a kind of a thing with the EMTs and the medical staff on track every event. On Friday morning, I kind of go through a long talk about kind of crashes and everything, and I show them in the helmets, how the helmet's an important part of the exam, and the helmet always has to kind of accompany the rider when they're getting seen. Because if you pull the lining out of the helmet, you'll see the inside of the helmet is black. And it's black for a reason because the polystyrene foam, which is kind of what absorbs that impact and dissipates the force, is white. And so if you look at a helmet, you pull that liner out and you look at the helmet, and if you see spidering in there, then, well, they've had a more significant impact. And so I'm going to look at that rider a little bit closer than the one whose helmet, like CJ's, was untouched. Um, so we actually did an interesting study last year with the University of Texas Dell Medical School. We looked at all the crashes in MotoAmerica over the year, and we looked at whether they had one of the newer rotational helmets or a non-rotational helmet. You know, and the rotational helmets help dissipate some of the force, the lateral forces, the rotational forces, as opposed to the impacts. And there's only a few helmets out there, but it actually does decrease the concussion rate, those rotational helmets. And it's like mountain bike helmets with the MIPS, which is a proprietary kind of rotational device. So those, and that's probably going to be part of the new FIM helmet standard, is some rotational component to the helmets. So yes, you can have a concussion without hitting your head.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, showing that styrofoam, or I'm sorry, that polystyrene inside the helmet, that liner.
It
When
is
that ha
styrofoam.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't want to use a brand name, but when you see that, most riders know. I mean, every rider knows this. You don't ever wear that helmet again. You can't. That helmet's done. It served its purpose.
It's one and done. Yep.
Okay. So that's interesting. I want to ask you about some of the specifics. So there are two markers in this blood test that you do. One of them is a protein based on glial cells that only, as I understand it, exist in your brain. And I want to talk about how that is found in the bloodstream, as well as the ubiquitin, which is an interesting name. Can you talk about those two a little
Sure.
bit? Yeah.
So I'll just kind of I'll explain the test a little bit, and then I'll kind of get to your point. So there are two biomarkers that we're looking at when we're doing this test. One is associated with the glial cells, which are the cells that make up the gray and white matter of the brain. And then there's the UCHL1, which is associated with the nerve cells, the neural cells. So the GFAP is associated with the glial cells, the UCHL1, which is the ubiquitin cohydrolase, is related to the nerve cells. Think of it like an egg. You have an egg. Everything is inside that egg unless it's cracked. If it's cracked and damaged, then something leaks out. Similarly with the nerve cells, those two biomarkers are inside the cell. They don't get outside of the cell unless the cell is damaged. And so we can find those with this test, which is a very sensitive test. That was the difficulty, is we're measuring picogram levels, which are, I mean, I think the analogy was a picogram is equivalent to the DNA that's in a hummingbird cell. So it's incredibly small amounts of material we're measuring. It's a very sensitive test. And we're measuring those in peripheral blood. They shouldn't be in the peripheral blood. You shouldn't see those in the peripheral blood unless there's a damaged cell. So we're measuring these levels, and it indicates that the cells are damaged. Now, you're correctly pointed out that the glial cells are only found really in the central nervous system in the brain. Nerve cells are found everywhere. Hence the name ubiquitin, ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So then they rise at different levels, and it's kind of the perfect combination of biomarkers. And the Department of Defense did an outstanding job identifying those two, and they're the right markers to measure. The UCHL1 rises, they both rise fairly quickly. The UCHL1 rises in peaks earlier than the GFAP peaks a little bit later. Your window is about 24 hours is what you're measuring them, but they both are elevated within minutes, frankly, after the injury. UCHL1 peaks, I think, at 4 to 8 hours, I believe, and don't quote me on that, that may be incorrect, but somewhere in that range. The GFAP actually peaks at 23 hours, and so they're kind of complementary in terms of measuring them. And so most of the original studies were done in ERs, and so those patients were a little bit more remote from their accident. Sometimes it's a couple hours. They've documented kind of that it rises quickly, but bottom line is because I'm the first one kind of using it in this setting, um, if my test is negative, I'm retesting them again at 2 hours just to make sure that didn't miss something, and that they don't need to go for a CT scan. So, I hope I answered. I was kind of rambling a little bit there. I hope I didn't answer your question.
I'm just
No,
glad there's not a spelling bee.
no, you for sure answered it. The one thing I thought of with this, and you talked about this earlier on, and I think I want to make sure we make this distinction if I think there is a distinction. And it's these markers do leak into your blood system, but that does not necessarily mean you've had a brain bleed. Is that correct? That's two separate things.
That is correct. Yeah, we're talking about two different things there.
Okay.
When we're talking about concussion, the analogy we're talking about a bruise, basically, a brain bruise. Whereas a bleed, where there's actually blood in the parenchyma, that is within the substance of the brain or on top of the brain, that may need surgical attention, is more serious. So we're talking about two different things there.
Yes.
Concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury as opposed to one of those other things, which is a more serious brain injury.
Okay. Yeah. I
Hmm.
want to make sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your racing.
Okay.
I think, I mean, when you look at it, you're the perfect person for this job, right? Because not only are you a doctor and a surgeon, but you know what it's like to race a motorcycle. So it makes you fit in nicely with the people that you're working on. Obviously, they trust you and you trust, and they trust that you know what they're going through a little bit. I mean, do you honestly believe like me that this is like the perfect gig for you?
It really is. It is. It's really great. I mean, I've like I said, I've been riding and racing motorcycles since I was 12 years old, and worked my way through college and medical school with motorcycle parts. I wouldn't be where I am now without motorcycles. And so, this is really a way for me to kind of give back to something that I love, first of all. And to be honest, I suck at other sports, ball sport, golf. I suck. I'm an okay motorcycle racer. And so anyway, so yeah, it's a way to me to give back a little bit. And I think it does. I do feel like I have a little bit of credibility because, I mean, it's funny. I had a rider come up to me and he was kind of all upset because he said, I got taken out in turn one. You don't know what it's like to be taken out. And I said, yes, I do. It was right after Coda. And so said, I do know what it feels like. And so it's like, oh yeah, I guess you do. So yeah, I mean, I think I understand what they're going through. I understand the passion involved with it because we all have passion for the sport, and I understand what it's like to be a racer. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm not I'm not on the level of a Cam Bovier, but I can hold my own. And so yeah, I think it does give me some credibility.
Speaking of Cambobier, when he had his accident at pit race, that actually required some plastic surgery on your part, basically, right? And
Yeah.
I told him after, I go, I think you look better now than you did before Dr. Carl got hold of you. So that was a pretty messy face, right? Or was it looked or just looked like a lot of blood?
Yeah, well, the face bleeds a lot anyway. It's a lot of blood vessels. Yeah, he had a pretty good kind of stellate laceration on his forehead. So yeah, we kind of spent a little time kind of piecing it all back together. But it turned out okay. Blind squirrel finds an acorn, right?
Hey, Dr. Carl, I want to talk to you. So you actually have a threefold involvement in our paddock. A racer, you're a medical director, and of course you have a plastic surgery practice, but also as of Road Atlanta and Stock 1000, you now have PS Squared Racing that is a partnership you're doing with another company, another guy who is the crew chief, I believe, for Corey Ventura. So you did a great job, by the way, with the press release about the weekend because it read like a story and it was quite a tale to be told of what you guys went through, having to stay up all night after the bike got destroyed on Saturday, him making the race on Sunday, and having another mechanical. But anyway, that's beside the point. Okay, I want to ask you something, and okay, this is another one I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit, but I'm going to ask you. Okay, we're running right now a video of Corey crashing. And that was during qualifying two on Saturday. He didn't
Right.
participate in race one because the bike got destroyed, and he had to go to a demo bike from Aprilia for him to race on Sunday, which predicated the overnight working on the bike. Um, so Corey is your rider.
Yes,
It shows him he hit his head.
he did. Absolutely.
Did he get a blood test?
No.
Okay.
So, it's I had another incident that was similar too with another rider. And right now it is approved, and I'm using it when I diagnose a concussion. Um, Neither of those riders had a concussion.
Okay.
And so it would have been of huge academic interest to me to do the test on those two riders. But I don't want our riders to think that I'm doing tests on them.
I see. They're not like they're guinea pigs.
Right. I don't want them to think that. I want to take good care of our riders. And so I treat Corey like I do everybody else. I mean, pretty much this week was a little bit of a, if you'll excuse me, a little bit of a shit show. But the I pretty much I told Brandon Cole, the crew chief for Corey and the partner in the in the project that come Friday morning I have my MotoAmerica hat on. And so that's the hat I'm wearing. And so that's the hat I was wearing when I saw the crash. I got the video of the crash and I was like, no, I mean, yes, it was a serious hit. His helmet, actually, you look at the inside of his helmet, inside of his helmet was fine.
Oh,
But no
okay. That's good to
sputtering,
know.
no sputtering, no nothing. The outside of his helmet was decidedly secondhand, but the inside of the helmet was fine. And so, yeah, didn't need it. There was another rider, also a stock 1000 rider actually, who had an incident, kind of the same thing, hit his head, has a history of a lot of concussions. And, basically, I kind of examined him. He showed up actually in the medical, he came in on the ambulance and, evaluated him. And I thought for just a second about doing the test, but same thing. I did not think he had a concussion, and so it was not going to change my management of that patient at all. So,
So so
and
this
that's the reason to do a test. If you're going to do it, you do a test if it's going to change something you do. You don't do a test if it's not going to change what you do.
Yeah. So this is incredible, Carl. So you can have a rider who hits his head and doesn't sustain a concussion. You can have a rider who doesn't hit his head and sustains a concussion. It's a real sliding scale. And it's up to you as our chief medical officer and medical professional to evaluate that even before, to almost triage the situation before you bring into play the device for a blood test.
Absolutely. And that's kind of my role in this whole thing. I mean, I have at all the tracks we go to, I kind of coordinate the medical care. So we have, the EMTs there. We have, we generally have at least one or two physicians who are kind of attached to the medical center who are licensed in the state and so I'm kind of helping them coordinate all that. And part of that coordination is helping them with this diagnosis of concussion. And so, I generally work collaboratively with those guys you know, so yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a moving target, and it is really comes down to clinical judgment. You have to, at the end of the day, it's kind of the art of medicine. So yeah, it can be very difficult, and that's what's so cool about this is that it actually is the first little bit of objective evidence that we have to kind of do this, because before this, there was nothing.
Mhm.
Going back to your example with the egg, do some of us have a harder shell?
Absolutely. So it's interesting. Women in sport have a higher incidence of concussion. And there's probably lots of different reasons why that is. They're probably smarter than we are anyway, so you notice it more. But the the so yes, there are different people have different thresholds for concussion, and so you know, unfortunately, as we age, we tend to get some cerebral atrophy. So there's more room in there for things to move around. And so older patients are more susceptible to concussion because there's more room for things to move around because that's what happens is the brain will kind of bump up against the skull is what kind of causes it most of the time.
So me, you, and Sean should walk around with helmets on.
Yeah, and me too. I'm just saying. I mean, we're the same generation. But so yes, there is a difference, and how do you tell that before? You know, don't know. And certainly, once you've had one concussion, you're more susceptible to have other concussions. So the multiple concussions, those people are more likely to have concussions.
Now I haven't had one in a while, and I think I've only probably had two, and one was on a motorcycle. But back then it was like, oh, somebody needs to wake you up every 2 hours, and it was that just a old wives' tale?
Yes, yeah. There's no objective evidence for that at all. Actually, the contrary is now true. We tell patients, part of my protocol for recovery is that you want them in a quiet place. You want them off of their devices and stay away from loud noises and all that kind of stuff. It's like anything else. You want to rest the brain
Let it heal.
and let it heal, right? It's just kind of want things to heal. So yeah, it's actually the contrary. We want people to kind of rest.
Wow. Wow. Completely the opposite. Okay, Dr. Carl, I got a big question for you here. And this is a question for you from your point of view. I'm not asking you to definitely, and I know you wouldn't do it anyway, but I'm just saying, in your opinion, so since the military is kind of the first with this test and this device, and we are the first in sports, of course, the elephant in the room is the NFL, IndyCar, any other, MotoGP. Can you see this proliferating throughout sports in which athletes wear helmets, and even among athletes that don't wear helmets?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that once again, this is a game changer in the treatment of concussion, and I think it will be fairly widely adopted in sport across disciplines because, as you said, it's not only helmet wearing sports. I mean, soccer, basketball, I mean, all those sports have concussion risk. I think that MotoAmerica is playing a critical role also in, once again, you know, 97% of concussions happen outside of sport. I think the awareness that MotoAmerica is going to bring to this concussion in general and this test in particular is going to be helpful in a much broader area where concussion, just in the general treatment and diagnosis of concussion. So, is it going to be involved in sport? Yeah. I mean, there's, I don't pretend to have all the answers. There's going to be probably different ways to use it. And there's going to be ways that I'll modify that we use it in MotoAmerica as we get more experience with it. But absolutely, it's going to be widely adopted.
That's cool to be pioneers in this, and I mean to establish a paradigm for other sports, and not just sports. I mean, construction jobs, all kinds of things where
Right.
people
Well,
might
I,
hit
I
the.
think I think it's a real tribute to the organization, to Chuck Axland, to Wayne Rainey, to Richard Varner, to Terry Cargus that they've kind of embraced this and they're a part of this. It just kind of shows the commitment that the organization has to rider safety, and that's just like with our now we're mandating airbags in most of our classes. The air fence, Road Racing World Action Fund air fence that we've got everywhere. I mean, it's a real commitment to safety, and that's once again, it's so our athletes when they get done with this can do something else like what we're doing. They can kind of have a life after this. So yeah, it's real gratifying to be a part of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't have too much else. Sean, I'm sure you got something.
Yeah, I want to ask about the device real quick, and this is probably more of an Abbott thing, but I think you'll know the answer to this, Dr. Carl. We are inundated when we watch TV or broadcast with commercials from pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, and so I'm only saying that because I am familiar with a device that Abbott Laboratories has, the Freestyle Libre, which I believe is like a constant monitor for blood glucose. So that sounds like that is sampling blood, possibly, or it is, and looking for glucose. So is the technology behind this new device similar to the Freestyle Libre in this idea of sampling blood and measuring it somehow or looking for it?
It's not. This is a
Okay.
little bit different. But it's interesting you brought up the Freestyle Libre because they're going to have one that's, I believe, that's going to be coming out that measures lactate levels, um, which is going to be really cool in terms of training and endurance and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm hopeful that we can kind of get that also in the paddock. You know, I think that there's some real interesting things that the riders could use that for in terms of the way they hydrate, the way they train, all that kind of stuff. Because you can then document on the motorcycle kind of how those levels are and kind of I think there's some really interesting things that are going to come out of that Freestyle Libre device. And it's going to be a consumer device, and I think that yeah, there's some Abbott's got some pretty cool products, and once again, like no, I don't own stock. I don't have any you know any dog in that fight at all. But it's there's some cool stuff. They also, as you know, I'm a big proponent of kind of adequate hydration.
Yes.
We're at Coda and stuff like that, and kind of my formula is for every 2 bottles of water, you have to drink a bottle of electrolytes, and you want something with real electrolytes in it, and my go-to is Pedialyte, which is not just for kids,
Or
you know,
hangovers.
or hangovers, right? But it does work for all both of those. But it's it's the best, in my opinion, the best oral hydration. It happens to be an Abbott product.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to throw this out there. I want to talk about real quickly about this other product that Abbott Nutrition has, and it's only because they're located in Columbus, and I used to work for an agency that was a client of mine. So I learned a lot about their nutrition products like Lucerna and Ensure and a lot of their tube feeding stuff. And there is a product that they have had for a while, which is called Juven, and it's for wound healing, and it has to do with rebuilding wound beds and the proteins. So I I talked to a couple of the Abbott people about it over the weekend, and we may even be possibly or already are using some of that product in our paddock. Can you talk about that?
I'm actually not familiar with that product. I'm
Oh,
familiar with some of the different wound healing products, um, but there's all kinds of different factors that people are putting on wounds. And
yeah.
being a plastic surgeon, I do deal with wounds some. Um, and they're all very helpful, but I'm not familiar with that particular product, to be honest with you.
Okay, that one is a nutrition product. It's actually like a powdered Kool-Aid, and you mix it up with water, and it's similar to. I'm sure you know that energy drinks have taurine in them, which is a
Okay, yeah,
protein, and it
okay.
actually helps you with recovery. That's part of what gives you wings, as Red Bull says. But this Juven is essentially kind of a energy drink in some ways, but it also has, because of its proteins in it, it actually helps with wound
Okay,
healing.
I misunderstood. I thought this
Um,
was something you put on when it's a drink.
no,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, those kinds of nutritional products. Nutrition is obviously key in wound healing. I mean, you used to see patients all the time who had wounds that weren't healing because they were real pale, and you give them zinc and just oral zinc, and all of a sudden it makes their wounds like magic.
Wow.
So yeah, so I mean, yeah, nutrition is hugely important. I'm once again not familiar with that particular product very much, but yes, I think that products like that certainly have a role in our sport for helping our riders recover and stuff. And so yeah, I think that's very very exciting.
And give us sorry, Paul, go ahead.
The iStat TBI, is that the name of the unit or is it the name of the
The the
test?
the unit is called iStat Alentity is
Okay.
is the name of the device, and the test is the iStat Alentity TBI test.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does the TBI stand for traumatic brain injury or is it
Yeah,
something blood?
no, TBI is traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, good job.
Okay. Hey, so Carl, give us a quick spiel on this because I know you talked to all the writers about this and you alluded to it about the electrolytes. So I can talk about Cameron Bobier because I discussed this with him over the weekend. Quite a while ago when he was racing in for Yamaha, he drank a whole bunch of water before he went on track and he became whatever you have a name for it, but it's called water drunk and he didn't feel right. He over diluted his body with water and didn't have enough saline in it. This is what you tell our riders. don't just drink a lot of water. You need to have Pedialyte or something with electrolytes in it. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when we're doing athletic endeavors or sweating a lot, we're losing electrolytes, mainly salt, potassium, those kinds of things. And if you just drink water, you dilute your sodium and you get what's called hyponatremia, which is low sodium, and that can cause neurologic problems and all kinds. It can even cause seizures. Um, and so when you're in a real hot environment, sweating a lot, you really do have to take, once again, for every 2 bottles of water, you need to drink a bottle of electrolytes, good solid electrolytes. A lot of the commercially available products have too much sugar in them and actually don't have enough electrolytes in them. So something like Liquid IV, Pedialyte, Gatorlyte actually is pretty good too. That has those are just brand names that I'm throwing out there, but that have actually a pretty good amount of electrolytes and particularly sodium in them. You don't want to take just sodium. You want to take something that's got a good balanced electrolyte solution. And so the most common electrolyte abnormality after marathon races is hyponatremia because people are drinking too much. They're running 23 miles or 26 and a half miles, 26.1 miles and drinking too much water. They're not drinking electrolytes. So once again, 2 to 1.
So when I on my bicycle, I only drink water, which I'm now
Mhm.
going to make a change. But
Okay.
could you mix like Pedialyte, like half Pedialyte and half water in your bottle? I just worry that it's like not good for my stomach. Like I don't feel good unless I'm just drinking water. But that might be something I just need to work through.
You probably need to kind of just see how your body reacts. Everybody's a little bit different. Honestly, I think you should probably just get a bottle of water and dump a pack thing of Pedialyte liquid IV in it and just use that. That's probably better. That's going to make you feel better. You'll feel better when you get done. Or if you have two water bottles on your bike, have one with water, one with Pedialyte.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Dr. Carl, somebody told me once, or I read it, that the indicator of a very highly conditioned, well-fit athlete is that they sweat a lot. The more you sweat, the fitter you are. Is that true at all?
There's some truth to that. There is some acclimatization that occurs or to hot environments. Your body kind of reacts better, and the reason you sweat is to cool your body off, right? I mean, it's evaporative cooling. So yeah, the more you sweat, the more you're going to keep your core temperature down. And so yes, if you're acclimated to the heat, probably going to sweat more. Now you can't acclimate yourself to the heat in one day. That's something that happens over a period of weeks, not a day. So it's not, some people I know when I used to do endurance racing down in Texas, we would do, 8-hour endurance races in, 105-degree weather. And people would say, oh, I'm just going to stay out all day and kind of acclimate myself. Well, no, that happened 3 weeks ago. That doesn't happen today.
Right.
Um, and actually on the day when you're in a hot environment and you're racing, the right answer and what I try to tell our athletes is that, you really want to keep your core temperature down. Your athletic performance actually will improve the first few minutes if you're in a cold environment. So stay in your RV, whatever, kind of get your core temperature down before you go out. Don't just stay outside all day. That's not the right answer.
Hmm. Okay. All right, we're running out of time, but we talked a little bit about your adventure this weekend. I just want to ask you about kind of the tail end of it a little bit because the RSV4 1100 factory, I don't know how many of those bikes are in this country. It's a pretty rare motorcycle and it's only recently been homologated fully for stock 1000. But you Corey, the team, whatever you want to say, destroyed the first one, the one you had. You got a bike and he rode it on Sunday. And I think I heard it was a demo that was ridden on the street earlier that day. Was it a demo that was in our paddock that somebody rode? And is that where you got it, or did you get it from a dealership? Where did you source it?
So go racing, they said. It'd be fun, they said. So so yeah, the Aprilia RSV4 is a totally legit motorcycle. It is really really cool. The factories aren't that rare actually. They're
Oh,
most dealerships have them. It's the difference in the factory and the standard is electronic suspension, and so which you don't actually need for racing. They've got some other little bits that are different, but the we had a bike and we had a mechanical with the bike and which caused Corey to crash and it actually bent the frame And so the motor was bad and the frame was bad. And so that's, the MotoAmerica, the technical guys said, look, yeah, you can replace the bike. It's toast. And so Aprilia happened to be there at the race with their demo rides. They do demo rides at each of our races. And so they had an RSV4 in their demo fleet. And so Piaggio Group was amazing. And a shout out to Josh Marsh and Brad Friedman for helping us out. They rolled the bike down into the paddock. If I've got a picture of it, it still has this demo sticker on the windshield, even if we made it into a race bike. Guys, we got the bike at about 11 o'clock on Saturday. Of course, it started raining Saturday afternoon. Brandon and Will Luce, the chief mechanic, Brandon's the crew chief, they spent literally all night taking the race parts off, making a race bike out of this demo bike. It was literally on a demo ride Saturday morning, and it was on the grid on Sunday. And the guy, I can't say enough about the guys. They were amazing. So I went to bed. I mean, I've got my doctor hat on. I got to get some sleep. And so I had the floodlights on outside the RV. We had the RV in the paddock, which we're using as our race transporter. And had the lights on, the big lights. And I kind of got up about midnight and I turned them off. I'm thinking, okay, they're done. I heard the motorcycle start about 2 a.m. I go out of my underwear and I'm like, turn the lights back on, and they're still working. I mean, they were amazing. And actually the bike was really good, and we actually just had a little we had a little bit of issue with the brakes. It wasn't actually so much a mechanical that the brakes off of the crash bike, they just took them off the crash bike and put them on the race bike. And there was just a little bit of an issue. The brakes weren't working as well, and Corey did the right thing on just coming in. So it was a really fairly minor mechanical. And Corey is an incredible rider, really nice guy, nice young man. And he was about 3 seconds a lap faster than his qualifying time in the race. I mean, he was actually building. I mean, he was getting some confidence in the bike. So yeah, I'm real excited, kind of what we're going to do at Road America. They're actually going to be at CMP this weekend, kind of doing some more testing, kind of working out the kinks on the bike. And yeah, I mean, this is the first one on the grid, so we're kind of learning as we go. And like I said, the team is amazing. Brandon and Will are amazing, and I'll give a shout out to Matt Spicer at Robum Engineering, who helped get this whole project off the ground. We wouldn't be there without Matt. So really appreciate him. And once again, Aprilia Racing, Massimo Rivola, those guys have been amazing. Imperial Sport Bikes, it's kind of helped us out too. And, Jesse Wilka used to be at Disrupt Racing, is also helping us out. So shout out to all those guys. I mean, we couldn't do it without them. Thermosman helping with the suspension, Dunlop tires. I gotta do the podium speech, right?
That's okay. That's all right.
So,
you're on the podium.
So, those guys, their Bezra Brakes has helped us out too. So, once again, it takes a village to quote somebody, and it really, I mean, these guys, I can't say enough things about them, and it's exciting to me. It's different. I've kind of was involved with Robum in years past, but this is the first time I've kind of been doing our own deal, and so yeah, it's something different, and we'll see how it all works out.
We love your passion for our sport, and also a quick message to the fans. So if you come to our races and you take a demo ride on one of the bikes out there, it just may end up in a race over the weekend too. So whoever rode that RSV on Saturday, hey, Corey raced it. So
or you could be riding a bent one.
No, we won't be putting any back out there.
You're awesome, Carl. Man, you do so much for us in so many ways, and it's really cool to have you involved with us. And keep it up. We're looking forward to seeing it at Road America as well.
All right. Well, thank you guys a lot, and thank all the fans out there. Once again, that's what we do it for.
All right. Thank you, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Take care.